run aground, and they had tugboats, emergency tugboats, ready to go retrieve it as soon as the conditions were safe enough. So I had not heard if there were in fact two ferries, but there may be a reason why some people are saying.
Yeah, it appears that it may have been the Chalmette Algiers car ferry and then the Canal Street Algiers passenger ferry, which would be the RTA ferry, correct?
Yes, but we can certainly double check that, Katie. I can double check it and get an answer for you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Paul. Amazing reports from him. We're going to continue to check back in. Amazing reports from him.
I think we have Doug Mouton standing by. Just over in Tangible, we have Doug Mouton standing by. Where at are you, Doug?
Well, we're in Hammond, Therese, and look, I want to say this. We're seeing deteriorating conditions, more consistent rain, and some wind gusts, but nothing like what Paul Murphy is seeing in St. Bernard Parish. Now, Ida is heading our way. We do expect to see effects from the punch of Ida coming later. But I do want to talk about this problem, which is sort of the long-range problem, or at least the problem that's going to be here for the next several days. We're on the Tangipahoa River. That is the Tangipahoa River right now, which at the moment is not problematic. It's at around 9 feet, which is just fine. But what's going to happen in the next few days, it is forecast for now on Tuesday night to get to around 22 feet, which is a flood stage. Now, that's not as bad as it got in May of 2016, but that would be a flood stage. I think if they could keep it at 22 feet, it would cause some flooding in homes, but would not be a major problem in Tangipahoa Parish. It would certainly be a problem. The hope is that those river levels don't go higher than 22 feet. The simple hydrology of it is that as Lake Pontchartrain fills up, all these rivers, including the Tangipahoa River and, for instance, the Chifuncto River, which runs to Lake Pontchartrain, and when they can't empty into Lake Pontchartrain, obviously they fill up and overflow. So this is a problem that we're going to be watching for at least the next 2.5 days or so. For now, again, Tangipahoa River is not an issue, but they're certainly watching it because it could be an issue by Tuesday night. Again, the conditions getting consistently worse here in Tangipahoa Parish. We don't expect the storm to arrive here for several hours, but it's coming this way. For now, reporting live in the Hammond area, Doug Mouton, Eyewitness News. Charisse, Katie.
All right, thank you so much, Doug. And I know that Chris Franklin said earlier that the track may be shifting enough to where that area, Tangipahoa Parish, Hammond, other areas on the North Shore there, they may be seeing more of that eye wall as the storm makes its way north. We're going to check in with Chris now to see what the latest track looks like.
Yeah, we do have a new, new coordinates, new information. And again, as far as the track goes, really we can only at this point follow along with where the storm is going and try and get an idea of where it will continue to go. And clearly we have seen that the storm is trending more north than northwest, so officially north-northwest. And it does look like it is moving, albeit slow. Again, there was a moment, even the folks at the National Weather Service office said, oh, please don't tell me it looks like it's stalling. But it may be that because it was starting to more go to the north, and that it was sometimes will slow down as they try and make that turn. Still moving, slow, but moving at 10 miles an hour. And a little bit of good news, if there is any in all of this, that the winds have come down. We're at 125, and the pressure is also rising at 941. It is still a very dangerous storm, but when we colorize satellite, you still see those intense thunderstorms that develop and continue around the center. Now, it does look like, and I know our icon for the hurricane is kind of covering it up, it does look like the eye is beginning to collapse. I'm going to switch back over here, and we're going to look at radar once again, because it does look like that maybe the eye is starting to kind of close in a little bit. And this is something that Alexander Cranford had mentioned as he was kind of measuring the distance of the eye, that it does look like it's contracting a little bit. And so if this was over the open water, it might mean that it was intensifying. But now that it is over land, that is certainly a good sign that it does look like it is weakening. And as we've mentioned, in terms of the impacts, it does look to be a little bit greater now for Metro New Orleans, as well as where we saw Doug up in Tangipahoa Parish, because it does look like it is moving more almost due north. So for folks in Baton Rouge, it does look like it is going to stay to your east, and you will remain in Baton Rouge on the drier side. Again, this little wobble one way or another, even by just what seems to be a very minor 20, 30 miles, can be huge in the eventual impacts. As we had been saying for several days, the impacts for the coast were not really going to change by any means, whether it made landfall in lower Terrebonne or lower Lafourche or even lower Jefferson Parish. The impacts of the coast were going to be catastrophic, and I can only imagine what it's going to look like once this is all done. Okay, we're going back to Paul. Okay.
Yes, Chris.
Yes.
We're going to pause you for 1 second because
Okay.
we have an update on that ferry situation.
Yes.
Obviously, anytime any boats break loose on the river, it's an issue, especially during a hurricane. So Paul got some new information that he's going to share with us about it.
Katie, your sources are impeccable. Yes, there were 2 ferry boats that got loose around the same time, around 1:30 this afternoon. One was RTA-2, which is the RTA's passenger ferry, which takes passengers between Canal Street and Algiers Point. And then the other boat that got loose was the Chalmette ferry. That is a boat that carries both pedestrians and vehicles across the river from Algiers to Chalmette. So 2 boats got loose. The Chalmette ferry was secured not too far from actually the other boat. They both made it upriver to about Arabi, almost the parish line. And the Chalmette ferry has been secured. And I believe at last report, RTA-2, the passenger ferry, was in the process of being secured. So they didn't get far. But what was interesting, both of these boats, you would think the river, it goes towards the Gulf of Mexico, but both of these boats ended up drifting upriver because of the wind, which is kind of an interesting phenomenon. But Katie Moore, I just want to tell you, your sources are impeccable. Yes, 2 ferries did get loose, both now under control.
Well, I am so grateful that we were able to confirm that, Paul. Thank you, and that they are both secured. Always, you know, the question is one of those boats going to hit a levee or a flood wall if it is loose in the river and bumping around? So that's very good news tonight, and thank you for that update, Paul.
That could be terrifying. I'm glad that seems to be under control now. We're taking a look at radar, and again, just kind of looking at the trend. I'm not as much into the forecasted track in the near future, only because we're really going to have to more or less watch where the center of the storm continues to track. And again, the way it has looked, it does appear as though it is going to be moving more due north, which does put more of the New Orleans metro area underneath the potential of some of the strongest winds. Now, something I should have really pointed out, and I'm going to get to that graphic in just a second, with regards to estimating the wind totals and the wind speeds, and something I really should have pointed out with that. We'll get to that in just a second. But again, the intensity of the storms is still very much healthy. However, as I've said, it does look like the center of the storm, the core, the eye, is beginning to fill in and shrink. So this is all a good sign that the storm is in fact weakening. In the near future, I really think the storm is moving a little bit more even east of this line from the National Hurricane Center. So I do think it's a little bit more on the eastern side of their margin of error as it continues up to the north. So it does appear as though right now Baton Rouge may be spared the worst. And they're going to get some strong winds as they are on the western side, but they're also going to be on the drier side. So the rainfall totals there are not going to be nearly as extensive as what most of southeast Louisiana will see. In terms of the heaviest of the rain, that's what we have moving over the city right now. As a matter of fact, a few of us just walked and stepped outside on North Rampart just to watch the water coming in. And it is still an intense rain, but it is such wind-driven that it's almost hard to get an idea of those rainfall rates, because it's not just falling straight down, as we've heard from so many of our reporters. It is coming at them sideways, which is why we're starting to get rain and water into some of the parts of the building here, because as that wind-driven rain, it, believe me, finds a way to get in. And something I wanted to also point out with the motion of the storm, as it does continue moving north for folks on the North Shore, and we try and point out each and every area of our viewing area, and it is kind of extensive and very diverse, especially with regards to the impact from the storm. With a more northerly track, as we heard from Doug Mouton, it does look like more of Tangipahoa Hope Parish would see some of those strong winds. Now, with regards to those winds, something I really should have pointed out, the radar in Slidell is sending a beam straight from the source. When it gets to areas this far away from the beam, it is not looking at the surface because, and I don't know if this is a controversial comment or not, the Earth is round. And so because the Earth is round, as the beam goes straight out, it actually is no longer near the surface. It's actually in the higher parts of the atmosphere, and sometimes by several thousand feet. So with that said, when we're estimating the wind speeds, and this is really something, again, I apologize, I should have kind of pointed out and highlighted. When we look at the wind speeds on the estimates from radar, you're actually looking at wind speeds not directly at the surface. You're actually looking at wind speeds a little bit more aloft, especially when you're talking about, when you're talking about that far of a distance away from the radar. So in fact, what we're looking at 122 miles an hour is probably a few thousand feet up. They're going to be far less as you get down toward the surface. So it is not, well, they just changed. It's not at 116. It is a bit lower than that. And even this is just a rough estimate. That 100 mile per hour wind that we see north of Galliano, it is definitely a bit less as you get down toward the surface. I kind of forgot that the Earth is round. But this is what we're looking at now. As you're closer to the radar beam, you're looking at more activity, winds, rain, whatever it is, a little bit closer to the surface. But as you get farther away, you're actually looking a little bit higher into the atmosphere. And so we're looking at more elevated wind speeds. That's not necessarily what is down at the ground level. And there is kind of an equation to almost determine what those wind speeds would be, but you do kind of reduce them a bit. So as a matter of fact, somebody at the discussion at the National Weather Service office is saying they're looking at right now in the Slidell area about 50 to 60 mile per hour winds across the Slidell area. Mandeville just had a wind gust of about 75 miles an hour. So folks on the North Shore are starting to now get into some of these really strong winds. The folks in Livingston have also been asking about the winds there, a little out of our viewing area, but for Livingston, the radar has been showing, let's see.
Check that radar.
You know, it's still fairly strong. So, you know, approaching 70 to 80 miles per hour. And again, it does look like those are the winds. And again, this is aloft. This is not down at the surface. So you kind of take that into consideration that it is going to be a little bit less, but very strong nonetheless. And this is what is moving directly and almost due north. So we are looking at kind of a core of some of the strong winds that will likely spread more across parts of the metro area. It would likely be more or less around the Jefferson Parish area as opposed to the metro New Orleans, the city of New Orleans. And then as far as some of the strongest winds, it looks really to be in more of the northwestern quadrant. That's what's continuing to push across the river parishes and will move toward the Florida parishes, but also could move across Tangipahoa Hope Parish within the next, timing this out has been a little bit more difficult. So let's see if we can kind of get a better idea to time this out for folks. Just looking at the center of the storm and when we could see some of these bands move your way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this animation and go to the latest image, and then we'll just get a very, very rough idea of where, let's say this band that's kind of moving across the metro area right now. So assuming it is moving to the almost due north, and I can make sure that we're looking at about, I'm going to change this, I'm going to redo it, and I'm going to get a more accurate estimate of when those rain bands that I'm talking about, what we're seeing over the city right now. So what I did was I told the computer to estimate a movement of about 10 miles an hour and kind of looking at this curvature of the storm. Drawing it there, moving it north, drawing it at home. Let's see here. Draw it like this, okay. And then, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. This is all real time, folks. Isn't this exciting? I'm also trying to look at a tinier computer screen. Okay, here we go. Now I got it. All right. let's see, and kind of pan that up. So the band of heavy rainfall that we have over the metro area, and kind of giving a very, very rough idea, assuming it will continue moving almost due north at around 10 miles an hour. This is when we could see some of the more intense rain moving across, say, Lake Maurepas at about 7:20. So in roughly about an hour, you're looking at Slidell. Now, you've already got heavy rainfall in the Slidell area, but I'm looking at kind of some of the storms that are down on the South Shore and when they would arrive into the Slidell area about 8:30, 9 o'clock in Hammond. This is also getting an idea of when some of those stronger winds will start making their way a little bit farther to the north. In Amite, may not really get there until about 10:30 tonight. Tangipahoa, as you go farther north, about 11. Now, Bogalusa, you're going to stay away from some of the strongest of the winds. That's going to be more so into Tangipahoa Parish as you go up toward into Mississippi. And speaking of Mississippi, really may not reach Macomb until after 2 a.m. So this is, again, just kind of a rough idea of this leading edge of the heavy rainfall that is right now over the metro area that will continue pushing up to the north. And this is where we're also finding some of these stronger winds, not the strongest, but some of the stronger winds as they continue moving in that direction. Something we wanted to talk about, we were discussing a little bit ago, and I did tweak some of the graphics here, was the reason that the storm did kind of slow down a bit. Here's what's going on in the upper atmosphere. This is the upper high that had been parked a little bit more right over the east coast, and that had been moving the storm at about 16 miles an hour, right? Remember, for the last couple of days, right toward the Louisiana coastline. Well, that high is starting to leave. It's weakening and pushing away from the coast. And what we're waiting on is an upper trough that is deepening from the north. As the upper high leaves, it loses that motion to turn the storm to the north. And actually, we're kind of on now the more western periphery of this high, which is why the storm is actually turned toward the north. But we're waiting for this upper trough. That will be deepening overnight tonight, but as it arrives early tomorrow, that's when we really should start to see a bit more of a fast motion or a faster motion up toward the north and east, because this upper trough is going to pick up Ida and move it finally away from us. So we are still looking at during the midday and afternoon hours tomorrow to begin those improving conditions. It's just we will likely have another few hours of some more of the rough weather to continue. And a lot of that, especially for most of the area, and I'm not talking about down along the coastline, most of that is from the extreme wind. And that extreme wind warning, as we discussed, it's almost to consider it a large tornado warning. You would not want to go out and walk around during a tornado warning, and obviously I don't think you'd be wanting to walk around in any of this, but the area that you see highlighted in purple is basically just to the east of the storm center and where we're likely to see some of the strongest winds gusting and the possibility of them reaching over 115 miles an hour. So this is where you need to be cautious. You will continue to see very strong winds over, unfortunately, the next few hours, because the storm itself is just not moving. Here's what some of the winds are doing around the city. Now, again, these are not officially National Weather Service office stations, so they're not always the most reliable. Downtown is saying, and some of the data is kind of setting or something, 30 miles per hour, gusting up to about 60 miles an hour mid-city. You know, Metairie, there's no way you only have 14 mile an hour wind, but certainly 20 to 46. I don't know about Lakefront. They're saying gusting up to 46, but the airport is certainly looking at about 71 mile per hour wind gusts. So it is still ripping outside right now, and that unfortunately is going to continue. Notice we've just about lost all of our data south of the city. Sustained winds right now at Kenner are 56, 46, and gusting up to 71 at Lakefront Airport. They've been gusting to 60 miles per hour at Slidell, and this may be another. Okay, they're about to issue a tornado warning for St. Tammany, St. Bernard, and Hancock. So let's take a look at that on radar right now. So this is for St. Tammany, Hancock, and St. Bernard. Again, sometimes it's almost impossible to find it on radar, so we have shear markers that will allow us to see where the storm is. And I'm going to switch over to velocities, and this will give us an idea of where this rotation may be within the storm. So if this is for, I'll wait for the warning to actually come out and see if we can find it. If it's for St. Bernard, maybe right in through here. If it's for St. Bernard, and then for Hancock, I'm wondering if maybe they're looking at this little feature right in through here. It doesn't really jump out at me, so I'm kind of waiting for the warning to actually be issued. The folks at the National Weather Service office are incredible. They usually will give us kind of a heads up as to what their thinking is. Right now they're saying a new tornado warning will be coming out. And again, these are a little more populated areas. As a matter of fact, we did have confirmation of a weak tornado with some debris on the ground from the Biloxi news station. WLOX had reported that they were seeing some debris. So we have at least confirmed one of the tornadoes that were warned along southern Mississippi. Oh goodness. They're actually saying in the National Weather Service office in Slidell, this band of where the warning is about to be issued could come close to our office, and they may have to take cover. It is a second circulation that they're a little more concerned about. So let's see if the warning actually comes out, and then it'll appear on our graphic. But it kind of looks like it's in either here, trying to figure out exactly where, and then kind of moving in this direction, that it might, in that trajectory, take it over the Slidell office. We certainly hope that is not the case. Okay, so there's the warning, and the warning was just issued. So, okay, yeah, so it's that little rotation that we've seen here, and kind of tracking that along. It would take it maybe not as much into Hancock County, but certainly into the Slidell, Pearlington area, and moving in the direction. So right now we do find the folks in the National Weather Service office in Slidell under a tornado warning. And as they've said, it looks like there may be actually two little circulations that they're highlighting and discussing. And I'm just going to read what their text says. It's for eastern St. Bernard, northeastern, it actually does include part of Orleans Parish, southeastern St. Tammany, and southwestern Hancock. The storm itself is a storm capable of producing a tornado, located, it's kind of along that whole line from near Lake Catherine to about 10 miles northeast of Shell Beach, and it is moving at 70 miles per hour. It is booking it. So that is a very fast-moving storm. And again, what they're saying is it's kind of within this entire rain band. So I'm going to switch back over to the reflectivity and show you it's kind of within this whole band of rain that they're kind of seeing several little areas of rotation. And so they're warning for this part of St. Bernard. Again, you're kind of more in the Biloxi marsh. It doesn't affect too many folks. It does include a small portion of New Orleans East, all outside the levee system, so I'm hoping that there are no folks that are left there. But then also into St. Tammany Parish, and as I just said, it does include the National Weather Service office. So if we do see some rotation and indeed a tornado, it could potentially go right past the airport in Slidell and the National Weather Service office at Slidell. So let's switch back over to the velocities. And again, what we're looking at on velocities are the winds. And these are the winds that move toward and away from the radar. And what you're looking at is kind of the greens, the blues to greens. And this is, again, why I was saying it's a little more difficult to find those in a tropical system, because overall, these winds are all moving toward the radar. It's where you have to find they're a little bit weaker and stronger, and that usually is indicating where there is enough of a rotation that would warrant a warning to be issued. And also looks like there may be a little something right here, too. So it might be this and this, and they had mentioned that there were two little circulations, so this may actually develop a water spout that would be more, possibly if it kind of follows that trajectory, possibly over toward the Weather Service office, and then this one, again, kind of following that same trajectory, also up toward the National Weather Service office. And they even mentioned that if it does look indeed that it is something that holds together for the duration, that they may have to take shelter in their own building. I know most National Weather Service offices will have a safe room that they can get to. So timing this out, again, it's moving at 70 miles an hour. Not often do you see a tornado warning that the storm is moving at 70 miles an hour. It'd be nice if we could get Ida to move out at about 70 miles an hour. So the storms, and they're calling them dangerous, will be Lake Catherine around now, 6:30, the Slidell area about 5 minutes later, and then if it does hold together, you're looking at Pearl River around 6:50, and then 6:55 for Pearlington. So the Slidell Airport and the National Weather Service office are within this warned area. This is where we're talking. This is a little rotation here, and I had mentioned it almost looked like there was a little rotation here. And they're mentioning the fact that this entire line almost seems to show several little areas of rotation that could easily produce and spawn a water spout. So those are the areas that we're going to be watching very closely. So for folks in Slidell, Pearlington, Pearl River, this is when you need to get to a safe place immediately. And I'm Guessing a lot of folks may have decided to stay there as you were a little more out of the woods. I know as we kind of went into Mississippi, if you were away from the coastline, it looked like this was never going to be a real detrimental storm for you. And so I think a lot of folks did stay along the Mississippi coast, and maybe even if you were maybe perhaps north of 12 in Slidell or north of 10, you might have had a better go at it. But definitely as we keep getting new images here, it kind of keeps changing a little bit, but they are still showing up. This little rotation is still showing up. And again, if this does hold, we may be looking at a tornado passing across parts of Slidell. As I mentioned, this is moving at 70 miles an hour. You just don't see a storm moving that fast. Remember the ones we were tracking earlier in the day around coastal Mississippi? It was about 50 miles an hour. Well, now we're looking at one moving at 70 miles an hour. So the storm itself, or should say the line of storms themselves, extend from more the Biloxi Marsh. It does include, notice, a part of the Orleans Parish. And then as you get toward Hancock County, if that storm does kind of follow that trajectory, might just kind of clip Jackson Landing and then move back into St. Tammany Parish. But we do find that the National Weather Service office is kind of under the gun with this warning, as they are kind of within the path of how these bands have been setting up and moving. So if this, again, does hold together, it would likely stay. So for areas that are okay at the moment, this looks like it would stay to the north of Lacombe. And if it did hold together, perhaps we would have to include Mandeville in a later warning. But right now it is for Slidell, then Pearl River, and Pearlington, and then pretty much for the Biloxi Marsh, and only just clips the eastern part of Orleans Parish. We're going to continue to watch this as, again, a lot of folks in Slidell really under this warning at the moment. So again, for folks in Slidell, you need to seek shelter immediately. It looks like there may be a broad rotation near Pearlington, but it looked more like this is the one that they are talking about as far as the main rotation that they're keeping an eye on. It looks like it's this one right here. So at the moment, it may be more or less a water spout as it's over the Biloxi Marsh, but if this rotation does hold together, then we could see it moving on land into southeastern St. Tammany Parish very shortly, because again, this is moving at about 70 miles an hour. So we'll keep a close watch of this. Switching back over to the reflectivity, you really don't find. Now it is actually kind of within a more intense storm at the moment, and just about getting ready to move more over Lake Bourne, and then that will continue up toward Jackson Landing if it does indeed clip Hancock County, and then back into into Louisiana and into St. Tammany Parish. So the rotation that we're looking at right there, and you kind of see that the colors kind of intensify. So it does look like that is a very well-defined circulation and a very well-defined likely water spout. Again, it's over the marshes, and then it's about to move over Lake Bourne. So if that does hold together, we could see it moving into St. Tammany Parish, but it's moving at a very fast clip. In terms of the timing of this, it looked to be at around the Slidell area in about 3 minutes or so. So it is moving very, very quickly. And then if it does hold together and continues on, that would pass right past or right over the Slidell Airport and the National Weather Service office in Slidell. Then you're looking at Pearl River at about 20 minutes, 18 minutes or so now, about 6:50, and then Pearlington about 5 minutes after that, because it is moving just so quickly up toward the northwest at 70 miles an hour, which you just do not see within these storms. As it's over the more marsh areas at the moment, we'll get back to it and just continue to watch that area closely. Again, for folks in Slidell, and if you're in kind of around the Pearlington area, more extreme western Hancock County, you need to seek shelter immediately, as it does look like there is a tornado coming your way. What is now become a tornado. So we'll look at that closely as right now more over the marsh. We'll kind of focus on that a bit more in just a moment. But also want to show you again the satellite or the radar imagery. I'm going to go to the last 2 hours to see what the trend has been on Hurricane Ida, and I'm going to put this into motion. And again, we like to see at least some motion, albeit slow, but we want to see some. And it is definitely moving now away from Houma. So for folks in Houma, they stayed, it does look like conditions will soon begin to improve because you are still, and notice the eye wall, the outer and inner eye wall, they're almost kind of merged at this point. So the storm is weakening. They're not as well defined. It is not as well defined of those very distinct eye walls that we had when it made landfall and even several hours after that. So it does look like the storm is finally starting to weaken a bit. We're going to continue to see that very well-defined center as the circulation came on shore with very strong, well-developed structure. So that's going to take a while to actually disappear. But as far as the intensity goes, the winds, the maximum winds, the pressure, maximum winds will be coming down, the pressure will be coming up. So all good news. And actually the heavy rain that we're undergoing right now, at least as you kind of watch this, there is definitely a motion. So the good news is it is not stalled. It did slow down, yes, but it did not stall. It has been a little bit slower to go north and almost due north at this point. Notice that we have the heaviest of the rainfall still moving over the city. Even at this trajectory, that moisture is still being surged and fed in from the Gulf of Mexico. So we are not going to be done with the rain, unfortunately, anytime soon. Now, we've been looking at the rainfall totals, and thankfully they have not been very substantial, but at least what we have seen so far has been manageable. Now this is just from rain. Again, during a tropical system, we kind of get flooding from various directions, and unfortunately for us, it's going to be surge for much of the coast. That will be an issue going through the later nighttime hours. Let's get back to that tornado warning and looking at the velocities, jumping back over to the velocities to kind of find that area where we were seeing a little bit more of the rotation. Not sure why the color table kind of jumped like that. Let's see, it looks like it's kind of now more over the, let's see, a little bit more over Lake Bourne at the moment. So it is starting to move over water away from the marsh. So still not quite, at least it looks to me. But it does look like it's kind of right within here, right about in here. So it is nearing St. Tammany Parish at the moment. And if that does again hold together, we could see this as a little bit more of an issue for folks in Slidell. Again, folks at the National Weather Service office have actually placed themselves under a tornado warning and mentioned the fact that based on the trajectory of this, it could be moving directly over them. So something that they'll have to watch closely coming up here. Now, as we continue to monitor this, again, it still looks like it's more over the water. So I'll get back to that as we get. I don't know why the colors here just all of a sudden changed. We've been having some kind of kooky stuff go on with our radar over the last couple of hours. We'll have to kind of revisit that a little bit later. Switching back over to our radar reflectivity again. Just want to point out that the storm is in fact moving. We do have the kind of overall broad rotation of the storm that has produced several warnings. As I've mentioned, it does look like one that was around the Gulfport area earlier was a confirmed tornado. So at least one of the warnings that we had seen on the Mississippi coast has indeed been confirmed. Haven't had any reports of any of the other warnings having been confirmed or not. They're continuing the warning. Let's see what they're saying is, as they updated, severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado, producing tornadoes. We're located along a line extending from near Lake Catherine, about 14 miles northeast of Shell Beach, and moving northwest at about 60 miles per hour now. The impacted areas does include a portion of eastern New Orleans, Slidell, Pearl, Lake Catherine, Burlington.
É possível que você esteja, até o final deste ano, ganhando uma remuneração de até R$10 mil. Show surreal, parece muito, mas não é.
Also place it over the National Weather Service office. So still looks like it's more or less near the Lake Catherine, just to the east of Lake Catherine, and moving to the northwest at about 60 miles per hour. And it is to the northeast of about 14 miles of Shell Beach. So these are the storms that we're watching and keeping a close watch of as they continue to rotate around. And really, you can kind of follow the trajectory. If anything that were to develop in this band, you can kind of follow exactly where it would go and where it would continue. And this is also the training bands that we watch for heavy rainfall accumulation. We are getting that in and around the city. We're getting that around the center of the storm. And at the moment, there really haven't been too many big breaks in those rain bands. As we've seen in past storms, even as they make landfall and start moving inland, we sometimes will get dry air. Boy, that would have been great to get some dry air around us. And that would usually kind of help us out to spread a lot of the heavier rainfall away from the center and kind of get it displaced. That was never really the case. Notice how there aren't too many significant breaks. You might find some lighter rain between Bay St. Louis and Biloxi. You might find some lighter rain between, say, Ocean Springs and out toward Alabama, where the rainfall is a bit less. But the breaks are really few and far between with regards to no rain or heavy rain. That really hasn't been the case. It's either lighter rain or heavy rain all the way up to the center of the storm. And what we're seeing in New Orleans is some of the heaviest. And thankfully, so far, the accumulations of rainfall have not been terrible. And it is, so far, something that we can handle. I know just stepping out of the North Rampart Street a little while ago, a little bit of puddling here, but really, it's almost hard to get a judge just how bad the rainfall accumulation is, because it really isn't accumulating too many folks, because we have such a wind-driven rain event over the area that it has not really accumulated a great deal in the city. So, good or bad, we haven't so far had any reports of significant street flooding.
That's right, Dom. In fact, this entire area in downtown has now lost power, and is just going to start getting worse. As we get and look at the radar, you can see this thing is just to the south of Houma, and it is moving to the north, but it is slowed down. It is now a Category 3 storm, 125 miles per hour winds moving north, and now we're seeing power outages that are really expanding. More than 500,000 people out of power. That's just going to get worse as the next day. We are going to be looking at, again, going to be a lot of heavy rain, strong winds, and that's going to be the big problem. As the system pushes north, Tom, it's going to be causing problems through the Tennessee River Valley and all the way to the northeast by Thursday, Tom.
Ilhas do Sul. O bairro
going higher and higher into the sky. So usually when you're much farther away from the radar site, you may be in essence several thousand feet that the radar is actually sampling. This close though, this is much nearer the surface, and that was why even in the discussion that came out before the National Weather Service issued their warning, it was almost a little bit of a they were kind of on the edge of their seat because they could see this coming and they knew that they could be within its path, and they certainly still are, just kind of looking at the trend of where this has been going. And there's a new image as you see it kind of change. That little couplet is still there just about over I-10 at the moment. So this will be something we watch for, and again, if you are in this path, you need to have seek shelter already as this is moving very, very quickly. And that's always been kind of the problem with tornado warnings in tropical systems. The warnings usually come out very quickly, and they tend to be, at least in South Louisiana and southern Mississippi, they tend to develop a little bit right along the Mississippi Sound, sometimes a little farther offshore, and might start to see a little bit of a spin up. As we've talked about, over the water there is a lack of friction, so it's easy to get that little rotation. Not always as easy to keep that rotation going once it moves over land, but usually the fact that the overall circulation of a tropical storm or hurricane and the fact that these are moving so quick, it usually means that that warning or that tornado is able to kind of maintain itself and okay, and we're also getting the, this is something we'll be, thank you so much. I appreciate it, Tasha. Just a bottle of water. We've also gotten the new information in, so something we'll be watching. It's a giant Alexandra. Yeah, yes, we do have Alexander Cranford. Scared me to death. It was a giant Alexandra. Okay, they've issued a new tornado warning. So yeah, if we do have Alexander that can maybe take over here for a second and start discussing. We also have a new warning, because again, it looks like that little couplet is definitely holding together. So what the Weather Service did, I'll toss things over to Alex, it looks like they've extended and added to this to now include Hancock, Pearl River, St. Tammany, as this little storm may continue moving up toward the north and west. What I also wanted to point out is that we do have new information, the 7 o'clock advisory in on Ida, and the, catastrophic storm surge. The extreme winds will continue, but it has weakened a little bit more. It's now down at 120 miles per hour. Pressure is at 944. So again, all good things. The forward motion continues northwest at 10 miles an hour. So that's the 7 o'clock advisory, on Ida. But I'm going to let Alex take over talking about this tornado warning in St. Tammany.
Okay, thanks, Chris. I know Chris needs a drink of water. Let him have a sip of water. As we get into what's happening now, of course, like Chris said, the storm thankfully is weakening a bit, but still, of course, all the same stuff is happening just about with the rain bands and the tornado warning. So yes, just to get into a little more closer look at what's happening now with the tornado warnings, really it's still the same general area. And as we zoom in here, you can see the red blinking boxes. This is a new spot. You can see expanded a little bit beyond where it was first initially located for the tornado warning. So Chris has been showing that couplet, and it's not just this one now, it's been expanded more, and that kind of makes sense. As we were tracking it, we were saying it's going so fast, 65 miles per hour within this rain band. So this is really fast moving, and it looks like we may have it possibly even extending toward Picayune, Mississippi. So that's kind of the big thing with this latest warning, is that it's including a bigger area, not just Slidell, but if you're just a little bit to the north of Slidell, if you're toward Picayune, and really outside of Slidell off to the east as well, just kind of on the fringes here of Hancock County in Mississippi, all of this area now included under a tornado warning. So as Chris has said, at least one good thing is that hopefully everyone's already inside in a safe spot, because there's a hurricane passing by. But just to reiterate, we are looking at that tornado warned segment of the rain band really passing over really close to the Slidell area right now. So let me change it to our velocity product too, so we can take a look at what's happening here. And look at this, it is just so close to the radar site that we can just see it, the rotation here. And again, it's not a confirmed tornado at this point, but we've just been seeing it with all these different scans showing up. So it's really close now. Here's the radar site, as you in Slidell know, it's over on the kind of the side of the town with the mall and so forth, I guess the old mall. And then off to the north, we have this new warning, and that's because we have a couple more areas where we are seeing that little notching or that little coupling. And the velocity, again, when we show this, usually it's very, well, sometimes it can be very clear cut. You can see sometimes even that kind of typical hook echo shape, but that really comes more with big supercell storms where you're seeing powerful tornadoes. As we've been pointing out, these are small little spin-ups of tornadoes. They tend to be brief. They may touch down and then go back up again. So we are seeing the potential for that, but again, it's a little harder to spot. It's not so overt like it can be with some of these tornado warnings that you get with powerful storms that are kind of just by themselves. Often those supercell storms, when they're out by themselves, produce big tornadoes, and you can see it more clearly. But we are seeing a couple of spots here, and again, the big spots, the Slidell area, including the National Weather Service office, which is over there, again, kind of on the eastern side of town, or excuse me, western side of town. And then we have off to the north, we are now including parts of Hancock County and into
Oh, that break was short-lived for me. All right, let's take a look. We lost the signal there from Alex. We'll get it back in just a moment. But as she was also mentioning, this broad band of storms almost has several little areas of kind of a rotation, a broad rotation, one of which does look like it may be closing in. Looks as though it's probably going to stay to the northeast of the Slidell radar. So that is certainly some good news there for the folks in the National Weather Service office, but bad news for Pearl River is it looks like it may be moving a little bit more over you now. So that rotation is what we're looking at. And again, as she had also mentioned, these aren't usually as clear cut as the storms that we're watching with the more or less supercell severe thunderstorms that we would see in our severe weather season, but they're usually almost a little bit more, honestly, for lack of a better term, they're a little bit more hidden within these overall bands, because it is a little bit more difficult to find winds moving toward and away from the radar site if this whole line is moving in one direction very, very rapidly around a hurricane or a tropical storm. So that's, again, why we have the computer the radar perform algorithms that will help us find that kind of wind shear where it finds that change in direction and would indicate maybe, and hopefully it does look like this is a little bit more of a broad rotation now, so hopefully whatever is there is weakening a bit. But I want to also read the new warning that had come out, because just as the warning had come out, we're also looking at the information from the new warning. This will be in effect for the next half hour. So what we're looking at is thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado. This one was near Pearl River, Slidell, moving northwest at 65. Debris is always going to be very dangerous, and for anyone in their homes, again, at this point, everyone is in their homes. Nobody's out and about in Slidell. But this does include the area of Slidell. Alex had mentioned that it does kind of expand out toward Picayune, Pearl River, Sun, Pearlington, Bush, the Stennis Space Center, as well as the Slidell Airport. So it does include a little bit more of a larger area. What I'm going to do is I'm going to widen out here and switch back over to the reflectivity, just to kind of give you an idea of how these are almost, in a sense, hidden as we can clearly see, or maybe not clearly see. What we're looking at is, when we look at the velocities, we're looking at the actual winds. So this is actually the Doppler part of Doppler radar. You're able to see the motion of the winds either moving toward the radar site or away from the radar site. And this really gives you a clear idea of the motion of a hurricane. The winds here are all moving toward the radar. Then here's the radar. At this point, they're all now moving away from the radar. We can also see wind speeds, and when you see a difference in the wind speeds or a change in the wind direction, that is wind shear. So what we're looking at is a potential tornado. Again, this is something that we're going to be seeing probably a dozen more of before we continue through the overnight and into early tomorrow. And the threat that is just always present with a landfalling hurricane when you find yourselves on the eastern side, as unfortunately we do. It'll be something that we continue to monitor, but we do have other stories that we want to get to at the moment. Katie?
All right, and we do have some more stories that we want to get to, including a situation in Metairie. There's apparently damage to a senior living facility in Metairie, serious storm damage, and Karen Swenson is joining us now with the details on that. Karen?
Katie, thank you so much. I'm here in New York City. I came here to drop off my daughter for college and essentially got stuck here because the flights were canceled. My heart is in Louisiana, so I have been making calls, and there is a very precarious, tenuous situation that is unfolding in Metairie right now at the Metairie Towers condominium complex. For those of you familiar with Old Metairie, that is right across the street.
Robert, thanks. You do not have to apologize for technical difficulties. You're in the middle of a hurricane, we understand, but those images really telling the story for you. Thank you so much. I want to go now to Casey Curry. She's got the latest on the storm.
That's right. As you mentioned at the top of this cut in, we really did talk about the fact that now we've downgraded the storm. The National Hurricane Center now rates this at a Category 3. The winds have dropped just a little bit. No surprise now that the storm is making real contact with land, interacting with land. That tends to break these storms apart, weaken them a little bit. Powerful storm still, though, Category 3 with winds of 120 miles per hour. Ida still has gusts of 160. Pressure is up just a bit. It is still moving off to the northwest at 10 miles per hour. On this track, we will likely still have a hurricane very late tonight, early tomorrow morning before we start to see it downgrade a bit during the day today, as it does turn a little more to the north and eventually off to the northeast. This track means that we're going to be talking about this storm system for lasting effects through much of this next work week. But for now, the big focus is on Louisiana and southern parts of Mississippi. Let's talk about storm surge, because we're still very concerned about some storm surge across the area. Some warnings still in place all around the New Orleans area, stretching all along the coast here of Mississippi and into Louisiana or into Alabama. Here are the rainfall totals, and you can see there's this huge bullseye kind of elongated stretching up from New Orleans, where we are expecting anywhere from 10 to 18 inches of rain likely. We could see up to Galveston later on this evening into the overnight hours. Don't be shocked if you hear a little rumble of thunder as you're trying to go to bed tonight. That's those showers and storms that are really due to Ida pushing off to the south and west. And you can see things are relatively quiet across Houston right now. But what we're watching is this band of showers and storms to push off to the south and to the west and make their way towards our area if they can kind of hold together. Here's what we're looking at, a live look outside right now where it looks really nice as we're looking out from our southwest camera. In Sugar Land, 90 degrees. It feels like temperatures are dropping down just a little bit. It still feels pretty steamy, feeling like 102 in Galveston. As you plan the rest of your evening, here's what you can expect. A few scattered showers and storms. A lot of you will stay dry. Temperatures will slowly drop on down to about 80 degrees overnight. And then keep the umbrella close because we do have scattered showers and storms in the forecast most days. You'll notice tomorrow slightly drier air moving in, a northwest flow on the back side there of Hurricane Ida. We're still going to keep a few showers going. In fact, we'll keep a little bit of way of rain chances all the way through the end of the week. Temperatures staying seasonably warm. Highs well into the 90s.
Casey, thank you, and be sure to stay here on click2houston.com for the very latest. We'll see you back on KPRC2 for the news at 10 after football.
It's kind of going away from us.
so you can see the impact of this, because once I break from that impact of the storm, you'll see the wind, or from the protection of the column, you'll see the wind against my clothes and how aggressive this wind is. You know, gusts are expected to reach right here about 60 miles an hour, and you have the wind, you have the rain, and those are not even the main concerns. You also have concerns about storm surge. You have concerns about river flooding. There's tornadoes threat. There was a tornado warning in the past hour here. So there are many, many concerns, and that's why you have local officials telling people to abide by the curfew that was in place since 8 a.m. this morning, saying stay off the street, stay away from the street, because they know how quickly these conditions can change. And despite that, I'll tell you, you see some of the shore over there, despite that, maybe 5 minutes ago, there were people who were out there taking pictures, playing in the wind, and that is the concern that officials have. They say, stay inside, take this storm seriously, because this wind damage, or this wind that you have now, can easily cause damage. The flooding can come quickly, and that's why officials are saying stay inside until they make it through this storm. Richard?
As the governor said, it's always darkest before dawn.
Not an easy task.
Would you know if somebody has gone from here to Morgan City?
Yeah, I'm waiting to hear about it.
Yeah, to any one of your other friends in India.
Check. Once we get to Morgan City, we're going to basically be out of it. There's people over there, so yeah, I mean, it's got to be, we just got to get to here. We'll give this thing
So once you go to Morgan City, the storm over? Is the storm over in Morgan City?
The storm what?
The storm over. The hurricane is over, and there's no hurricane.
Yeah, Morgan City was out of it.
We have a situation here in St. Bernard Parish that parish leaders are watching very closely. We understand that there are 22 barges that have broken loose and are now in the Mississippi River near mile marker 86. Earlier in the day, we were talking about 2 ferry boats that got loose. Now we're talking about 22 barges that got loose. And just a little while ago, we spoke with the parish emergency operation manager, John Ram, about this situation. John, what can you tell us about the 22 barges in the Mississippi?
Okay, well, this afternoon, President McGinnis asked me about 22 barges that broke loose, so I'm going to contact him. So I called the Coast Guard, the operations desk, and it was confirmed that 22 barges broke loose in the river this afternoon, approximately a half hour or so ago, at mile marker 87, which is downriver from PBF and right near Valero Refiners. They're currently still in the river. They cannot go out to try and secure them with this weather. Don't know what's in them or where they came from or just what the circumstances were that led to them breaking loose.
What are your concerns about these barges in the river?
Well, the major concern is maybe hitting a levee somewhere. That would be the biggest issue right now. Don't have any idea what's in the barges. Well, like I said, the biggest concern is whether or not they're going to strike a levee. But at this point, I don't think it's going to happen with the way the river's not moving that fast. I think we just got to get them secured as